Just record. All right, we are live. Thank you so much for taking out some time. All right, so let me jump right in. The site is mediamics.com, and I appreciate you guys taking out some time to do this. Like I said, I really enjoyed the movie, and let me just jump right in. So, how did you guys kind of meet, and how did this project come about for you two?
Well, we met a long time before the project. Alexis was attending UCLA, and I was helping out a friend there on a student film. And the very first time we met was working on this little student film, and we were the rainmakers. So we were literally standing outside a window with a hose
Holding
shooting water
hose.
up onto the window. And I felt this connection with her, and we got along really well. And so she'd asked me to help out with a couple of the student films she made, and then I was doing some little projects, and she helped out, and it kind of just grew from there. And we just, we worked well together, and we brought different expertise and backgrounds to each of our projects, and it just blended well. And then our outlook on life, and that the need for perseverance was critical. So that's kind of how we met, and we just worked on small things, and then worked on a little bit bigger things, a little bit bigger things. And I'll let Alexis explain kind of how a Savannah Haunting came about.
Cool.
Yeah. So we had started developing, we had a lot of projects we were working on together. We got along well, and like you said, our specialties are so different that it works really well. It's nice. We each have things that we're good at. Uh when Mark moved back to Savannah, he had some family things he needed to take care of. So he went back to the house he had grown up in, which is the house he's in right now. And his family was still living there. So I would visit a couple times a year. And, during that time, it was mostly social, but we talk about projects that we were working on and developing. And I would stay upstairs in the floral bedroom, which is it's the nicest room there. That's like the guest room where they put suckers, like me in. And it's beautiful. It has, floral wallpaper, ornate furniture, its own bathroom. And the first night I stayed there, it was the middle of the night, and it's probably like 4 or 5 a.m. And I hear something, and I kind of look around. I don't see anything. I just feel like something's watching me from the corner of the room.
Hmm.
And I wait. I look down at my bed, and there's literally like all the sheets around my feet just drop down. Like the blankets, everything around my feet drop. And then something comes over to the side next to my face and screams like a demonic yell through what sounds like a radio. And it scared the living, it was the scariest thing I've ever experienced in my life. So I waited until the sun came up. I couldn't leave because to leave there, if you've seen the film, this is the floral bedroom, which becomes the little girl's room. Typically, it has a full size bed in there, but at the time, when we shot, we had a, little girl's bed. But you have to go from there down the hallway, which is a mezzanine, down the stairs, and then through past the aquarium to get out to some of the other bedrooms, which is where the rest of the family was sleeping. I was alone in the big house, is what we call it. And I go out there, finally around 7 a.m. I'm laying on the couch, and Mark's dad comes in, and he's like, honey, like, why are you sleeping out here on the couch? Like, why aren't you up in, the nice room? And I'm like, it's haunted up there. And he's like, oh, yeah, yeah, I know, I know. So it was common knowledge that this house is haunted. And so I talked to Mark, and I'm like, well, that was, the scariest thing I've ever experienced in my life. And we're trying to figure out what we're going to do next. And it's like, maybe this is the story we need to tell, and we started finding out more and more about the house, the hauntings, and we realized like this is the story. Like, why don't we shoot here in the actual haunted house? It's kind of wild and, maybe slightly dangerous. But we thought it would be, a fun thing to do. So I told Mark, let's start. So Mark started writing the script in the house. And, this was something where, he wrote with, I mean, the characters are fictional, obviously, in the movie. That particular family didn't live there, but we based it all on real feelings, real hauntings, real, um, real characters and feelings that have been recognized in the house by mediums, by, people just come and visit for the day. There's a lot of stories and a lot of experiences.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. I mean, why do you think people are fascinated with haunted houses? I mean, myself included. I mean, why do you think people just can't get enough? I mean,
Well, someone who lives in a haunted house,
right.
um, I've had enough. Uh, it's I think there's always been a fascination by humans with things that are unknown. And, haunted house, there's something about, we always think of our homes as our protected place. It's where you go back to kind of protect you from the rest of the world. And the idea that there's something in your castle, in your little private space that you don't understand, you don't know whether it's good or evil, you don't have any control over it. I think there's something that's very unnerving for people when they think about that. I mean, it's one thing if you go off somewhere else and run into something that's scary or terrifying or what have you, but when it's in your house and you don't know how to get rid of it, it's a very different thing. And I think there's just something just innate in humans that are drawn to that.
And I guess, tell us about your experience about being one of the first films to kind of shoot. I read during the COVID, but the pandemic, I guess tell us how that was for you. It must
Well, I'll
have.
talk a little bit about the scheduling, the shooting, and I'll let Alexis talk about the actual protocols that we had to deal with. But,
Wow.
the film was scheduled and budgeted pre-COVID. We were supposed to start filming March 23rd, 2020. We got shut down March 21st, 2 days earlier. And we were shut down for 5 months. And during that 5-month period is when we worked on the feature-length documentary about the history of the haunting, its possible causes, and those kind of things. We were finally given the go-ahead to start back in August to film, the narrative movie, but we didn't have any additional money. Yet there was a 30%, 30% of our costs went to COVID. We had a 10-hour shoot limit, which anyone who's ever worked on independent film knows a 10-hour shoot day is considered a very light, easy day. So we had to try to get, so much more done per day than we'd anticipated, because instead of shooting 14 hours a day, which is pretty normal for an independent film, we're only shooting 10 hours a day. And I had to go through and do what I called a COVID edit on the script, because we just didn't have the money to pay for all the COVID requirements for all the characters. So I cut about 9 characters out of the script because we just couldn't afford them. We had some folks there's a local school here in Savannah called the Savannah College of Art and Design, and they have a really good film program. And several of the students had offered to be stand-ins, which is very useful, folks who just are standing there when you're setting up the lighting and pulling focus and things. But we couldn't use them because we literally couldn't afford the COVID cost of just having them there. Things like extras. If we wanted to bring in extras, there was this huge cost requirement and the threat of someone coming in with COVID. Because at that time, we knew nothing. I mean, it was so early on.
Right.
And obviously getting shut down for COVID would have been just devastating to our budget. So, if you pay very close attention to the movie, you'll see a lot of the same extras over and over and over. You'll see Alexis in a lot of scenes. And it's because we used our crew. We just they throw a shirt on and change their shirt and jump in, because we had to think outside the box to get it done. Luckily, our cast showed up, ready to rock and roll. They knew their lines. They were ready to perform. The crew worked their butts off, under some really arduous circumstances to deliver. And then a lot of folks in Savannah just kind of opened their arms and helped us in a very loving way. I mean, without that help, I think it would have been much more difficult to finish the film. But it was tough. But I'll let Alexis speak to like the actual requirements that we had to go through with COVID.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff is boring. That's why I brought Beardo out, to be more entertaining. But yeah, I mean, it was Mark hates lizards. He thinks that they're pests. So I brought this to make him more nervous to spice up the interview a little bit. Um, but it's, I mean, yeah, like there was just a ton of protocols. I mean, there's things about like how many people we could have at a space at a time, dealing with, I mean, in the humidity, I think that was one of the hardest things for us shooting in Savannah, which we had to, of course, 'cause that's where our house is. We're not going to go to some soundstage in LA, but like for the makeup artists, they had to wear face shields because while they're doing makeup on an actor, the actor has to have their mask down. So it wasn't safe for, a makeup artist to be right next to them with only a mask. They had to protect their eyes. So they kept steaming up, right? So they couldn't see because their masks were steaming up, which is extra worse with the humidity, in Georgia. So, we just had problems that there weren't really solutions for yet because like we were one of the first movies to go. So like we talked to a couple other people who, had started to experience these things, like what do we do? But it was a wild west. It was all new. So we just had to take every single precaution we could. We lost a lot of time with COVID testing each day, so we had to do tests Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and we had to pull every single person away, during this time to go and do a quick test. So it's like we had to have our DP leave for a minute, and we'd like push him through and pull him to the front of the line, get him in and out fast, quick. But we just had just a lot. It was, we say like we wouldn't want to, shoot through a major COVID pandemic disaster again. But like you said, a lot of people came together. I mean, there's things that, had to change or were more unique or different that, we can try to be grateful for and, look at the positive side. But overall, it was a major challenge.
So now, good. I'm sorry. Okay. And I guess the question that my wife wanted to know the answer to the most. She said, was there any experiences, that occurred during shooting? Was anything out of the ordinary? Did anything happen? That's what she wanted me to ask. That was her one question. So,
Absolutely. Because we were a lower budget movie, we were trying to save money. And so we had two of our crew members staying at the house, just sleeping in bedrooms. And neither of them made it past a week because we didn't know at the time why they had left. We found out later that they had experienced the same things. Basically, they woke up in the middle of the night and they saw this fog on the ceiling of their bedroom with what they described as almost like electricity running through it. And that's something that a lot of women who stayed at the house through the years have seen that same thing. I've never seen it, and I don't know any of my male guests who've ever seen it, but a lot of female guests have. But they both experienced that. Our lead actress, she saw this fog in several rooms. We had a crew member who was coming up the stairs, and she said something pushed her up the stairs, and she fell. So, luckily she wasn't pushed down the stairs,
right.
But it still cut her leg open, and she was freaking out. She was thinking about quitting. We had crew members that would get touched. They'd be standing by a bed, and something underneath the bed would reach out and touch their leg. Hearing voices. For me, because I live here, I was living here during the filming, and lots of crazy things happened to me. I remember waking up at 3:30 in the morning to the sound of my bedroom doorknob just going back and forth, like as someone was trying to open the door.
And that's when the room was blocked off.
Yeah.
So, like most of the house, like the rooms were all used for what they were, but there was one area, it was a living room area, and we had to put a fake wall there. So Mark couldn't get into his own house through that door. Like it was completely blocked off with a wall. And that's the door handle that was moving. So there was no one who could be on the other side of that.
Yeah, it was literally a completely blocked off area that someone couldn't get to except through my room. But my room, the door was locked from the inside. So that was pretty terrifying. But while we were filming, lots of things happened during post-production. I worked on post here at the house where I'm sitting right now. And, what I found is doing things regarding the movie really amps up the energy in the house. When I'd be up late at night editing, just doors slamming, voices, footsteps, just lots of things, and lots of the actors have talked about just creepy experiences that they had that weren't necessarily terrifying, but just really unusual, things following them back to their hotels where they were staying. Alexis could probably speak to some of those stories.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because so Jenna Shaw plays Rachel Rancourt, the mother of the film. And I think she probably had the most experiences, but for people who are experiencing hauntings, we didn't go at this telling everyone, hey, this is a real haunted house because, you don't want to scare people off or, be off-putting. And in Savannah, there are a lot of hauntings. It is a normal thing. So for Jenna, she specifically was kind of keeping it to herself. And then she heard the hairstylist talking about seeing this fog. And so that opened her up to be able to talk about it. She realized she wasn't alone in it. So then people started talking to each other about it. Anna Harriet Pittman, she plays the daughter April. She realized that something like once she had been to the house for some rehearsals and she went back to this apartment she was staying in downtown, she had experiences there. I think there's one time she walked in and she saw just glass, like all over the floor, just kind of in a little trail, like in the middle of the room. She was the only one staying there. She hadn't dropped anything. She had been there before. The place was clean. Um, so she noticed odd things, heard things. Jenna, who was staying in the same apartment, she started having issues after she had been to the house for rehearsal, even there. And she said that she heard there'd be a lot of knocking on the door. She said somebody, it sounded like somebody like slapped the door. She also was working with her script on the table and something like smashed it up from the bottom and like shook it. And then she was hearing humming there too. There's so many stories. A lot of people are having issues even once they left, which is interesting to us because like we've had people who've watched the movie reaching out to us lately, and they're saying like they're having experiences after watching the live stream, after watching the movie, they're having their own experiences. So we're going to start a hashtag called Ash hashtag Ash ASH followed me home. And so
Sure.
anyone who's having their own experiences, tag us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, let us know what your experiences are because that's been really interesting to find out. Like people are noticing things, even just from watching it, just from watching the movie, they're having their own things at home, which is, very frightening to us.
Yeah, we have an editor for the documentary that we're making, and he lives in Los Angeles. And of course, he had all the interviews we've done with the family members and with that thing is so distracting to me.
I know. I put him down. I put him down.
Thank you. But he had he was looking at all these interviews of folks who had lived in the house for the years, and also I was capturing several really terrifying supernatural phenomena on the security cameras here in the house. So anyway, he's working on all this footage, and he starts reaching out to me saying, "Hey man, things are happening in my house that are similar to the experiences that I'm seeing in these interviews from people that were in your house." And he believed that somehow by simply watching the footage, it was now affecting his home. And he was getting very freaked out about it. And I've received at least 10 messages from just strangers on social media saying that they watched the Savannah Haunting and they loved the film. They said, but now they're having weird, creepy things happen at their house. I don't know if it's just folks, you get scared watching a scary movie and you kind of hear things that, maybe aren't there. I don't know, but it is very interesting. We're going to have a really well-renowned paranormal team come in early December to the house. And that's one of the things that I want to find out about. Like, is it possible for whatever is in this house to transfer to another house only through watching film or footage from the house?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. That's incredible. And, you mentioned the feature-length documentary. That's something I'm also very interested in seeing myself. What can you tell us about that in addition to the film? That sounds very exciting.
Well, we covered the history of the haunting, right? We talked to dozens of people who, my family members who had lived here, friends who had visited or spent the night. We brought in multiple mediums, and we brought in one from LA, one from Chicago, one from New York, some from Savannah. We brought in a couple of paranormal investigation teams. We brought in an 82-year-old voodoo priestess. One of the things that happened after, at one point, Alexis and I found an old voodoo doll hidden on the roof of the house. And so we were very curious how much voodoo had to do with what's going on here, because of course, Savannah has a long history with voodoo. And the voodoo priestess, confirmed what we had feared. We brought in Eastern Orthodox priests. Basically, we were bringing as many people as we could from different backgrounds to take a look at the house. We brought in some historians, and this is the thing that's the most shocking for me. Obviously, I've lived in the house now for years. I'm used to the supernatural things. But when I wrote the script, like Alexis was saying, it was inspired by true events. And specifically, it was inspired by the type of haunting phenomena that occurred. I had that same type of phenomena affect the family in the movie that moved in here. But there were some things that I made up that I thought were total fabrications for the purpose of telling a story, only to find out that they were actually true. So one of the things that I'd made up for you guys who have seen the movie is there was an antebellum plantation on the property, and during the Civil War, it was burned down, and that plays a critical role in the story. I just made it up, only to find out after we had finished the film from several historians that this property actually was the location of a plantation, and the plantation did burn down in the Civil War. So there were several things like that like it tells me that whatever's in this house was giving me information. You know, we have a really amazing medium out of LA who likes to say that I didn't write the script, that it was written through me, sure. Which I'm fine with. You know, I don't claim to be a screenwriter, but yeah, it was. So anyway, so the documentary kind of covers the background, and then we also cover the obstacles that we faced trying to film in an active haunted house. You know, we got footage of us in the process of making A Savannah Haunting. We capture some of the scary things that happened, and talking to the actors and the crews, what happened to them. So really want to give people a good sense of, if they watch the narrative film and they're curious about the true story behind it, they can go to the documentary and get in depth about the true story. And in many ways, the documentary, I think, is scarier than the narrative, because it's absolutely 100% just real. There's nothing fabricated about it at all.
Sure. All right, crazy. That's amazing. That's something I was looking forward to hearing. And we got time for one more. So, you know, what each do you guys got planned coming up next? Is there something I missed that you want to throw in? You know, let me know. Shoot off. Whoever wants to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, like, the biggest thing that is coming up is the documentary. So that hasn't been released yet. That'll come up next year. You know, it's mostly completed, but there are a few things that have been changing as we've been going through all this, and we are bringing in a few extra paranormal teams. So I think some of that is evolving a bit. It's been an interesting process with the documentary, because it wasn't just all like, okay, let's just shoot this and it's done. It's like, oh, we're learning more things as we go. And like, even since the film came out, we've been learning things. Like, a neighbor reached out with some critical information about the plantation that was nearby. So we're like, okay, we need to look into this now. You know, so we thought we would be done with the doc, you know, even by now, and then we're finding more information that we have to include. So that's been really strange and interesting and cool.
Yeah, for me, like, I'm so fascinated by this idea of folks kind of transferring, or having the haunting transfer from my house to their house by just watching the movie. So that's something we're going to explore a little bit in the documentary, because that never crossed my mind as being even a possibility. So I want to learn more about that. So yeah, like Lex says, the doc is the next thing, and then, you know, we'll move on after that to whatever next project comes along. And we got a lot on our plate that we're looking at.
Oh, that's amazing. All right, cool. Well, listen, Mark, I appreciate the time. Alexis, thank you so much for taking out some time, and hopefully we'll chat again soon.
Thank you. And for anyone who wants to see the film, right now it's on iTunes, for Apple TV, it's on Amazon Prime, it's on Vudu, YouTube, it's on Fandango, and Redbox, and Comcast, and Spectrum. Basically, anywhere you would go to rent or buy a movie right now, you can see it there.
Yeah, if you just Google A Savannah Haunting, there's plenty of opportunities to see it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.